Let me go in here. I can edit all of this out anyway. All right, and I'll start with the intro. Hey, what's going on, Recreators? This is Nick. You're listening to the Life Recreated show, and this show we're all about diving into learning, healing, and growing in mind, body, and spirit. And so each week we are all about just tackling some difficult conversations so that we can learn how can we can just fully walk in freedom as a new creation. And I'm excited about this conversation that I'm going to have today with a good friend of mine. Today, we're going to be diving into the topic of talking about toxic masculinity. And I'm actually joined by a good friend of mine here, Mr. Arrington. He is a CEO, the founder of Rugged Evolution Beard Care. I mean, he is responsible for helping me to get things in order. When I was lost, I found him and he got me on the right track. He's also the host of the R Smooth podcast, man. And I'll be definitely sure to link all of those down in the description below. And I'm excited about me and him having this conversation. We're going to be talking about toxic masculinity today. Arrington, how you doing today, man?
Man, what's going on, Nick? I feel so honored being on this show, man. I'm excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me, boss, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm excited as well, bro. I think, I had mentioned it the other day, and I'll take this time to say it right now. Ever since we met, we've known each other for a few years now, and kind of met through different avenues in real estate, man. But I've always been inspired by what you're doing as a young entrepreneur, as a young Black man in our community, man. It just blows my mind. All the stuff you got going on, everything that you're working towards, the value that you're adding to other people, man, is exponential, man. And I'm just excited about everything that and how everything is working out, man, and how everything is laying into place, man. I'm really excited about it for you, man. Definitely.
Man, thank you so much. Just hearing you say those, kind words really, it always motivates me because I tell everybody I was never trying to work on to be a leader. I'm excited. I do want to, lead by example. I do want to, let my actions do, I guess lead to some people, but I never want to be the person, higher up. I never want to be that leader. I was behind the scenes kind of guy, but just my whole focus, my whole mission in life is to change the narrative. So just with the things I do, the way I talk, walk, introduce myself, socialize with people, the relationships I build, the way I work, I'm just trying to change the narrative because you know what I mean by change the narrative. There's always that stigma with African American males. Oh, and young. Oh, he can't. No.
Yeah, because how old are you? How old are you?
27.
You're 27. Okay, gotcha. All right, gotcha.
27.
All right.
Been a business owner for about I say entrepreneur for about 5 years, going on 6. But in that frame is, I've been very fortunate and blessed to accomplish some great things and still have a lot of more things to accomplish. But just building great relationships. I'm a listener. I make sure I listen. All the young people out there, please who's watching this and listening to this, be sure to always listen. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So it's like you gotta close it and you gotta listen to all the great tools, and that's helped me in life. So yeah, man, I just like to change the narrative. That's all I can say. I just love to change the narrative. I mean, there's you got the haters out there. You got the haters. I hopefully I don't think I have haters, but there's people that look down on you just for the color of your skin and all that negativity. So I just try to help change the narrative and keep them positive.
Right. And I think you brought up a really good point, man, before we kind of jump into what we're going to talk about. I think that was one of the things that really drew me to just admiring you and what you've been doing and how you move, is the fact of like really kind of changing that narrative. You know what I mean? Like for me, I just turned I turned 40 last year, or not last year, last week.
Boy,
And
you don't look
yeah,
you don't look a day over
exactly.
25.
I know, boy.
Boy, that man exfoliates.
Yeah,
That man
exactly, boy. I get better with time, man.
There you go.
And so when I look at like where I was at 27, 28, 29, I was like, man, if I would have had kind of like that mindset, or just been exposed to that level of excellence, or wanting to portray that level of excellence, man, things could have, it would have played out differently. So that's why I get excited to see it, and just to see it play out. I tell my wife this all the time. One of the things that I love seeing, and it's one of my big things that I really focus on, is I love seeing when people are in the grind of like building something great,
Mm.
right? And what I mean by that is like, a lot of times, especially now in the time that we're living in, right? We can see success, we see people becoming successful, we see all these different things, and we kind of see like the after effects of it.
Mhm,
But a
mhm.
lot of people don't really see like the journey. You know what I mean? The journey
They
is
don't
like
they
what
don't see
feels
from day
important.
one to, they don't see day one until where it's taking them.
For
I
sure.
absolutely, yep,
For sure. And the journey is, I feel like, where you learn a lot of the lessons at, right? I mean, success,
absolutely.
it becomes once you get that, to that level, it's like, all right, I'm assuming that it would just kind of flow and just kind of roll in a certain way. But seeing the journey, that's what's important, man. So I'm excited, man, to see your journey, bro. Like I said, I'm
I
gonna
appreciate
link
it.
everything down below, bro, because I definitely I know that an amazing legacy that you're gonna be leaving, man, on this earth for sure, dog. And I don't just throw words out there like that to just say words like that. I ain't the type to be. I don't want to gas people up. You know what I mean? We ain't a gas station here. We're gonna
Yeah,
tell you
man,
how it is.
gas away, gas away. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
exactly.
I'm
Yeah, I'm gonna
enjoying it.
give
No,
you
I'm
your
joking.
flowers now. I'm gonna give you your flowers now. You know what I'm saying? So we got them now. So
No, I appreciate it.
cool deal. So look, I wanted to jump into a conversation. I think this is a good conversation. I wanted to really address this issue of toxic masculinity. I know
Mhm,
you and I,
mhm,
we had a like we talked on the phone maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you remember this, but you had mentioned like you had touched on that topic and how you had maybe had a conversation with somebody around there, and it
mhm,
really started piquing my interest because I think that's one of the issues that we as young men
mhm.
in our generation we're really kind of facing, and we're really kind of need to learn how to change the narrative around, right? We need to learn how to
Absolutely.
change the narrative around that. So I wanted to talk with you about it, uh, as far as coming from different angles of being an entrepreneur, angles of being a young black man, angles of being a younger man in general,
Mhm,
and just
mhm.
kind of see what your take is. But where I wanted to kind of start first was for you, how would you define when you hear the term toxic masculinity? How would you define that term when you hear that term?
When I hear that term, I always think of, stereotypes, masculine stereotypes. So, for example, uh, uh, changing a tire, learning how to work your ways around a car, changing a tire, or being an athlete, being very athletic, playing sports. Those to me are like stereotypes because you're their actions. You're assuming that, okay, if you suck at sports or if you don't play sports, you're not really a man. If you don't know what this is underneath the hood in your car, that doesn't make you a man. If you oh man, if you don't listen to hip hop music, that don't make you a man. If you oh man, if you are a fan of theater, if you are on Broadway, if you are more involved in music than sports, stuff like that. Certain actions, stereotypes. That's when I think of toxic masculinity.
Right.
Um, it's an irritating term. I mean, I hate the fact that it really exists because we are trying to, and I say we as far as the ones that are trying to help change the narrative and build up the change. We're trying to get away from that stigma, but you still have people, and a lot of them are raised in that era, but you have young people that still believe, hey, if you don't drink beer, you're not a man, right? if you can't take a,
Right.
if you can't take a drink, you're not really a man, or little things like that. If you watch this, you're not a man. And I can't stand a man. It's crazy, but I mean, it's still a word that we're trying to get rid of, but it's still very much in existence in our society.
Right. So with being like, and I know you mentioned earlier, you said you were 27 years old.
Mhm.
I feel like kind of where I'm at right now is I'm kind of in this gap, like a generation gap, because it's like,
Mhm.
like I just turned 40. So it's like I know some of the older gentlemen that I look up to, people that are in my dad's age, their age range. I saw that as being really prevalent in their, you know what I mean, their kind of culture and their
Oh,
society. Like
absolutely.
it was crazy, right? So where it was like, all these different kind of mindsets that they kind of like handed down that said, okay, it was almost like, especially here in our country, I think it's a bigger issue,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
we're in a capitalist country when we revolve around capitalism. So there's, on top of just kind of like this masculinity issue of what defines a man, you now
Hmm.
have another whole layer that says, okay, well, this is what defines you as a man, but then you have capitalism and the
Yeah,
things
because it's
that
almost like a leadership role. Like in order for you, you have to be what's the word I'm looking for? If you're not most of the CEO positions, most of the chairman
Mhm.
positions, right? You got to be the man, the hard earned, top dog man, right? And
Right.
it starts to lead to the form of when our queens are not getting the right respect, right, and the
Mhm.
opportunities. But to go back what you said, being that it's the age gap of us, and you looked up to the older generation, that was the same as me. I have my mom always jokes. She's like, "Why do you have a lot of older friends?" I mean, you were at my bachelor party. I mean, how many? I mean,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was
hey, you were probably the youngest guy there,
that,
almost, right?
that's what I'm saying. I was growing up as a kid. I was always, surrounded by my uncles, my great uncles, older cousins, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation. I truly believe that my uncles were probably of that generation. If you do this, you're not a man. And it's no disrespect to them. I mean, it was a point where I'm like, I still respect them to this day, but I also want to I want to make them happy, so I want to do this. Let me accomplish success in playing athletics or doing this, and so I
Mhm.
can really get that title of I'm a man now. You're a man now, right? So
Did you get into sports? Because I know you played. I know we talked about it before. I don't know we didn't mention, but you played football and like you've been
football, track and field, soccer, lacrosse. Those are my main.
golly.
Those are my I play a little bit of everything. My two main sports was probably track and field and football.
Gotcha.
But I wish I would have stayed in soccer. But again, you go back to toxic masculinity. They
In our
soccer
community.
in our community,
Yeah, yeah.
soccer is not that that main that sport, but it really is one of the most toughest athletic sports in the world. But in our community, basketball, football, boxing, stuff that vigorous stuff that puts a toll on our body, but just to prove that you have that toughness, right? So
Mhm.
those are sports
Mm.
I was involved. I did karate as a little kid as well too. Didn't know too much of karate, but I'm a huge fan of MMA, karate, all that great stuff. And yeah, those were kind of the athletics I did growing up. I was a big fan of wrestling. Still a big fan of wrestling too. So
Yeah.
again, the man's man, kind of sports and entertainment. So those are the fields that I done when I was much younger.
Right. And I think too, when you think about it, a lot of times the older guys that we hung around with and that we spent time with, they kind of tried to lead us in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you said,
Yep.
like but it's kind of actually interesting, man, is for me growing up, it was almost kind of like the opposite. Right? Like
Mm, mm,
I didn't get it was still I think it was still a level of like that kind of toxic masculinity in a sense because
mhm,
it was more like um it was more performance, right? Performance as far as education and like
mhm.
getting your books and a man needs to provide, a man needs to do this, a man needs to do that. So when it came to like sports, like I always was interested in sports because I'm kind of I'm already competitive,
Mhm.
but it wasn't like push like okay, it wasn't something that said that you were manly because you did the sports, but I still got the same energy with saying like it wasn't manly if you couldn't provide. Like if you wasn't being
Yeah,
able to
true.
be a breadwinner, if you weren't able to be X, Y, and Z, then you weren't being a man. So let me ask you this because this just brings up another good something to think about, like that I was just
Yep.
thinking about.
Yep. Yep.
With seeing that and like experiencing being pushed in that direction, what do you think it was about the generation that we experienced that really kind of pushed like this toughness on men? Because you mentioned something like you were like, okay, well, it wasn't manly unless it was taking a toll on my body
Mhm.
or causing me to have some kind of pain. Because all these stuff that you just listed causes pain, right? Like think
Absolutely.
about it, right?
Absolutely.
Sports, wrestling, fighting, all that stuff causes pain. What do you think it was about like that? Maybe that older generation that kind of pushed that.
Man, honestly, man, I'll go back in slavery. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of our, male ancestors, man, they were abused. They were abused and they were mocked. And I think that they knew that they did not want their that they didn't want their legacy, their next generation, to go through the same era. And what I mean by that is not to be spit on, not to be looked down on. You have to be tough in order to, make a way, and make a way at the table, or make a way and get your name mentioned. I really do think it's a fear thing, and it's just, again, our culture, our ancestors, man, we were abused. We were abused and mocked, and the whole 9 yards. So I really think that leading on to the older generation, they're like, hey, look, I need you to do this and do that. Like you said, be a provider. I need you to be a provider. I need you to know how to have all these different traits. I need you to different traits of labor. I need you to get your body strong in order to defend, because you're gonna have a family, and so on and so on. And that's just coming off the top of the dome. I think that's
Yeah.
I think it goes back to slavery for the older generation. Now, for like someone like my just my older my dad or my uncles, again, they had to get it from their dads, who were from that area. A lot of discrimination, a lot of mistreatment. So I think it's just the past abuse, and the past hurt and hate that they feared. I think they think that in order for you to not show fear, you have to be tough. And it's just that key word is fear. And that's where I think it kind of came upon it was brought up by our older generation, is just the fear, is the fear. So if you show less fear, then you're already showing us a sign of confidence.
Mm.
Even though they've always had the confidence, and they never really had the fear. It was just they never had the opportunity. That's what
Dang.
they never had the opportunity. So
All right. Well, so kind of diving a little bit more on that, because you made a good point. I mean, you
mm,
said, all right, well, it's not really like, because you think about it, when you think about that aspect of our history,
mhm,
right? If you look at a lot of, and I don't just, I try and be light with how I say words, but like, when you look at the physical structure
mhm.
of men from our community, and when you look at that comparison, it's like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I could really be scared of you, because I know that I could, if I had to put hands on you, I could do that. So it's like one of those things where, yeah, the fear kind of plays into it, and we have to be tough. But I kind of want to dive into a little bit of why. You know what I mean? Like, what causes that? You think?
I mean, it's just, oh man. I mean, and when you were talking that, the first thing I started thinking of was the movie Django, because the fighting
Hmm.
scene with the two big black guys fighting each
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
for entertainment. And
Right.
again, I mean, we weren't privileged enough to have our ancestors. They were not that privileged to have the great resources that white families back then had. And so it's like, okay, you had to have that physical appearance, because for one, you're doing heavy labor for people, whether if it was inside or outside. And it's it's really interesting, because now you got me thinking harder on it, because I'm like, I never really thought too much of the root aspect. I just always go on, you know how we were raised in the black community. Now, and we say the black community, but honestly, in older generation, and all, for all males, they were pretty much, the toxic masculinity was the same, right? Same
Hmm.
with sports, same with learning how to do certain labor work, learning how to uh know your way around a vehicle, like you said, being a provider. If the lady makes more than you, ooh, you ain't a man, because you ain't providing. You let the
Yeah.
woman take care of, all
Yeah.
that crap. So that's where I think I'm losing my train of thought, because I done lost what the what the question
No,
was.
no, 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 no. You're right. You're right. You're right. I think just we were just talking about, like, hey, like, where does that fear be? Where does it come from? Where is it developed from? Like I was mentioning, like, when you look at, like, who we are as a community, how we're built, how
Mhm.
we're kind of structured. It was like, man, what was it that caused us
Well,
to
because
have this much fear? You know what I mean?
but so I think where that came from was the fact that if they if and I say they, in slavery, I feel like if they did something wrong, or if they did not, like, if they if they had an issue, if the owner, if the owner saw an issue what they were doing, they would get abuse, right? You think of the,
Hmm.
I go back to films. You think of the movie, was it? Oh my
Django.
God, not
Oh,
well,
well,
not
no,
just
not
Django.
Django.
Glory. Remember Glory? I don't know if you
Oh
remember.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
Glory, the scene where Denzel Washington was getting whipped, and he
yeah,
had already countless slashes on his back, and
yeah.
the man showed no, he was still the whole time, but in if you looked at his eyes was tearing up because it was
Hmm.
obviously painful. But I think the fear came because if they knew if they got in trouble, they would have got
Hmm.
abused, hurt, or maybe their family would have got the same thing. So the fear comes from, well, if they hurt me or kill me, they might go to my family and do the same thing. So you need to be on your P's and Q's in order to not get like a red flag or a pink slip by by the massa. And I think that's where the fear comes from. Just same when it comes to in the workplace, and they tell you what do they do? They do like a trial runs. They do test runs. Hey, look, don't
Hmm.
do this because we had such and such do this back in in 2018 or 2008, but we just don't want you to follow back. We don't want that same thing to happen to you. So you need to do this and do that and do that. So I think that's where I'm assuming where the fear really came about was just the countless abuse. They said, okay, look, in order for me to stop doing this, I need to man up. What
Man
they
up,
say,
yeah,
I need to man up.
yeah. So now here's the thing that I think, and I think that's an excellent point. It makes a lot of sense because if
Hmm.
you do show that fear, if you do show in those type of moments and in those type of circumstances that you are afraid,
Hmm.
obviously they're going to exploit that, right? They're going to use that. They're going to be able to,
Well,
take that
well,
to another. Oh, my
yeah,
bad. Go ahead.
no, no. I was just gonna say another example is if you're a fearful driver, most likely if you're a fearful driver, what's gonna happen? An accident's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because you're driving already scared and intimidated, and that's why I always like to think positive. Well, for one, I'm not. I like to drive like I own the road. That don't mean I'm a aggressive driver, Nick. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying, in anything in life that you do fearfully, something's not
You're going to attract
some
something bad.
exactly, it's
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna attract something bad. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted to say.
Yeah, yeah. It's like definitely a law of attraction. But here's the other part of that too, though. Here's the problem, I think,
Hmm.
is that when you think about, if you think about in those type of environments, right? If
Hmm.
I establish this kind of fearful environment and where it was like, okay, I'm in pain as a man, right? So let's say,
Hmm.
for instance, using an example, I'm in pain as a man. I can't show that pain, right? The
Hmm.
problem is, I might not want to show the person that's above me or that I have to answer to that pain. But what happens now when I go home and I have my son that's trying to be, you know what I mean? Like as a kid, like,
And the problem is you're not going to be to your true self to them. You're not going to be
exactly.
you're not going to be really who you are meant to be, and you're not going to be true in your skin. And again, that and all that does is just hurt the next legacy, because now they're going to be saying, okay, well, he's never showing his true self. And that's why, we have a lot of friends that said, man, I ain't never seen my dad cry before. This is the first time I seen him cry. And
For
it's
sure.
rare.
That's a
It's
good
very
question. How many times you ever seen your you know what I mean? Like how many times have you ever seen that happen?
exact. And I'm the
I,
same. I'm the same way. Honestly, if I have to count, I would say two.
yeah, same here.
And then two is happens at where it normally happens, at funerals. So
Yeah.
that's the only time I've seen my dad get emotional. Um and I would say the same thing honestly for my mom. I mean, my family. I've seen my mother get emotional because she's a tough cat too. Now,
She is.
she's a tough cat too.
Yeah.
So I've only seen her emotional at and I don't think that, I think they do that just to always know that, if they show that kind of emotion around their kid, then their kid will get worried. So I think my parents, continue to raise me great because they never want to show that side of them. But it is important to show that side. So now you get all the elements of, your parents, right? But I
Right.
think they mainly do that to know that, hey, don't ever feel like, something's going on.
Mhm.
You're that's why I always say I was very blessed and fortunate to have a great support system like my parents, because there was never there was never moments I was, you know, nervous or scared or anything. Maybe if I did something wrong. If I did something wrong, that's when I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
scared.
yeah, that's different. Yeah, yeah.
That's when I was scared. That's why I was trying to look
Right,
for what hiding place can I do this time? What hiding place now? But
right.
they knew all my spots. They know my spots, so I was screwed regardless. But I was. But I've never seen my pops really get emotional, and nor have I want to see them see me get emotional. Other
Mm.
as a little kid,
Why?
if I
Why
got in
not?
trouble.
Why not?
You know what? Because I just personally, I don't like crying. I mean, it is weird as it sound. I don't like being sad. I don't like. I love. I'm all about positivity. Like I wake up
Gotcha.
happy. I
Yeah,
wake up
you ready to
grateful.
go? Yeah, yeah,
For
you
real.
ready to
Because
go?
I'm like, if I wake up
Yeah.
pissed off, I'm like, okay, my day's not gonna go great. So I always keep that positive mindset. And it's weird, and I'm kind of telling my secrets, but like I'm
Oh,
that
we gonna
person
hear all the
where
secrets, man. We're gonna
yeah,
keep
you
coming
know,
in.
I might as well say it on your podcast. I might as well say it. So I'm that person where I could be watching an amazing, inspiring story in by myself, and that's when I start building up the emotion. Because like you said earlier, seeing a journey from day one, and then or just seeing someone hit hard times and get motivated, either blessed. When I see nice blessings, being shown,
Mhm,
that's what makes me choke up, because it's a beautiful thing to see.
mhm.
But I make sure the room is empty. It's just, and it's weird. It's weird. My fiance's never seen me cry.
Really
um no,
interesting.
she's never seen me cry.
I could be honest with you, man. Last year for me, was the first time that my wife had ever really seen me cry like that before.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it was on a couple of, like I've shared this with you before, and I talked, to other folks about it. I had a rough year last year mentally,
Hmm.
and up until that point, I was like, yo, tight, like I'm not letting nobody see any kind of emotion.
Clench the butt cheeks.
Yeah,
Clench
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah,
Clench
yeah, I'm just tight. I'm tight. Yeah, you're not
them.
seeing anything. But then I last year, like I said, I was having a lot of those challenges, and I realized like, okay, there's for me there was something that when I went into those spaces and I was allowing myself to be kind of vulnerable like that, open like that, it for me it helped a lot with
Hmm.
healing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It actually was interesting about it, bro, was when I was able to be vulnerable like that. It made me less fearful. Like
Mm,
I didn't have
mm.
to worry. Like it didn't matter anymore, right? Because this is kind of going back to what we are talking about with toxic masculinity. Like one of the things that we get caught up with in a stereotype is that men are not allowed to cry. I've only seen my dad cry twice that I could really remember.
Mhm.
And the first one of the times was when I was leaving for the Navy. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like
mm,
so it's
mm.
like, it's like one of
An
those things.
emotional moment. That's
It's
definitely
an emotional moment,
that's
right?
definitely an emotional
Exactly.
moment.
But what I realized when I was in these moments last year, I was like, okay, well, if I can be open like this as a man and not have somebody say, okay, Nick, yeah, you're having a difficult time. Why are you having this breakdown? But have somebody that's like, hey, I'm gonna, I'm here with you and I'm supporting you. Then I
Mhm.
was like, all right, cool. Well, yeah, it doesn't make me less than, you know what I mean? Like it never really made me
And
less
it's
than.
so
So
freeing. It's so
for
freeing, right?
sure.
Like, because again, it's the stress is off because you worrying about it too much. Like for me, that's like, so I have other friends that suffer with mental health,
Okay.
and I always tell them just to, for them to feel more comfortable. I'm like, look, dude, honestly, majority of everyone that lives in the world has a form, maybe not an advanced form, but they have a form. Like for me,
Hmm.
I get nervous to the point I'll get pretty nauseous if I speak in front of like six people, maybe, or even more. I hate public speaking. I
Hmm.
absolutely hate it. That's why I enjoy the one-on-one conversations, but I can't stand it. And it's hard because being an entrepreneur and in business, and I'm trying to build a brand, if I don't show that confidence, then I don't make money.
Yeah.
I don't if people see if people see the confidence level of myself being very low, they're gonna be like, okay, I'm not gonna have any faith in this business. So
Right.
again, that adds stress to me. So I'm always just like, second guessing, second guessing, second guessing. So it's definitely freeing when you can really be truly open, and when they see both, you don't have to hide anymore. It's like, ooh, I can finally
I
relax
could just
now.
let it out. Yeah,
I
exactly.
can
Yeah,
just let it
yeah.
out.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's kind of part of like changing the narrative because
Hmm.
when I got to that point where I was like, okay, yeah, I can just kind of really talk about like the things that I might be dealing with or struggling with. I didn't I there was no it wasn't necessary for me to be as tough. Kind of
Mm,
going back to the
mm,
example that you were talking about when we look at the example of what's happening in our community, what's happening with slavery, whatever it may be.
mm.
Back then it was like, okay, I can't show this person that they're hurting me because if I do, then they're going to see it as a sign of weakness. What I
Exactly,
started
exactly.
learning last year was like, okay, I can express this side of my emotion, but that doesn't mean that I'm soft. It doesn't mean that you're going to walk over me. It just means that, hey, this is a moment where I'm like needing to process this and hurt. I look at guys like, to bring in the Bible to it,
Hmm.
I look at guys like David. You look at a guy like David in the Bible. This guy's a warrior. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like
Hmm.
he's just. I mean, I wouldn't
He
want to
never
run
showed
into
any
him.
fear. He never showed any
That's what
fear.
I'm saying. But if you see a flip side and you go to Psalms and you
Hmm.
read his things and he's talking about the struggles that he had and crying and emotions and all that stuff, I'm like, none of us ever really look at like David and be like, man, this guy was kind of soft. Like, ain't nobody gonna say that. You know what I mean? Like, but in our context that we're looking at now, especially in our generation, it's like, okay, yeah, there should be a point where we're able to express a lot of those things and kind of get it off. And I think it's
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing too, I want to
Mhm.
bring up another great, well, I say a story that just proved like while I'm always trying to change the narrative. So, a friend of mine, well, actually, I know multiple, well, not multiple, but I know probably a few guys that are openly gay. Awesome
Mhm.
dudes. I consider them great friends. One of them, I actually had on my podcast, and he's a musician, but he just launched probably 6 months ago. He entered into the drag world, right?
Okay.
And I told him, I'm like, well, you know what? I would love to have you on the show because, for one, I want to help bridge the gap between black straight men and the LGBTQ community. Because at the end of the day, you're human beings. You
Mhm.
should not be mistreated just because of your sexual orientation.
Mhm.
As a black man, I feel like that's kind of hypocritical. Just because, I mean, hey, people would judge me because of the color of my skin. So why should I judge? And I mean, you shouldn't be
True.
judged anything. We live in a universal world, a universal society for a reason. You need to accept all religions, all sexual orientation, all back. You need to accept them and just stop being uptight. Like, that's my whole pet peeve. I'm like, you shouldn't be mistreated. We should all be equally treated the same. So it was a
Yeah.
privilege. I told him, consistently told him it was an honor to have you on the show, and we had a great conversation. Myself and a few of my other great friends. It was really, he was in a room of all straight men.
Right.
Production crew in the background too. He was promoting a book of him dressed in drag, and I said, hey, y'all gotta buy my man's book, man. Y'all gotta buy my buddy's book and support, because hey, this is, and for him it was so freeing, and he felt so humbled because he's like, man, this is my first, like, he's done multiple shows. He said, this is my first like show, like talking with like straight men. And I'm like, well, hey, I hope it's first of many, because you're always invited. And I
Mhm.
felt comfortable, being around him. I didn't feel like, ooh, he this, he that. I'm like, no, he's
Yeah.
human. So,
Right.
but again, I bring that up because let a random, straight man or anybody be like, oh, that dude, he gay, or he
Right.
little sissy because you talking with him. So I'm like, dude, like, I don't, I never understand it. Look, I even stretch it out a little more. My fiance and I, my bride to be, we went to he was also on the show to launch. He was doing a drag show in a beautiful theater located in Virginia Beach, in Town Center.
Mhm.
And we attended. I said, hey, look, we were supporting a friend. It was our first ever drag show, and we had a great time. I called the man. I said, hey,
Yeah.
congratulations, bro. And I had a joke with him. I'm like, man, normally I don't really congratulate dudes, that rock the heels really good, but man, you rocked in them heels, man. Did
For
your feet hurt or
sure.
anything? And Share was like, man, your makeup was on point. It was fun, and it was. I know it had to be freeing for him because, again, he's still, he's a grown man. He's probably well in his mid to late 40s, but he still has his walls to hit, because there's a lot of people that don't like that. But
Mhm.
I bring all that stuff up because they will let you know the fact that you're just talking to me. you're brave, but you also put yourself at a risk of being insulted or people looked upon, people judging you and stuff. And that's what that
Right.
whole toxic masculinity, when I said the stereotypes, actions, it's all about actions. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's no true person that's like, oh, that's the man's man. It's all actions. It's all actions.
Mm.
If you were pink, you're not man enough, right? I'm wearing this shirt got some little flowers on it, and I rock the hell out of it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's just they continue to I just can't stand it. I get hot about it because I was on a radio show and a gentleman on the show was saying, I feel like now, and he was a much older guy in his 60s. He said, I feel like they're taking our manhood away. I'm like, what are they taking, making men less of a man? I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean, man?
That's a good
I
question.
was getting so
What is that?
hot.
What was his answer to that? Because what the heck does that mean? How do you take my manhood away from me? I don't
And
understand that.
see, and I told him, I said, really, I said, there is no true definition action wise of there. There's a definition of a man, parts wise, like man parts,
Parts. Yeah.
female
Yeah.
parts.
Right.
That's simple. But action
Right.
wise, there's really no true definition of man up and stuff. And honestly, I was so hot, it was a blur because I don't even think he gave us a response because it was like we kind of like said, no, it's ridiculous. But I think for him, again, he's much older. For him, he's like, well, you see guys like oh man, I'll just use Pharrell's example. Pharrell is very eccentric, very artsy. Sometimes you might see Pharrell wear some shorts, a hat, like a skateboarder. Next thing you might see Pharrell wear a skirt. The man might wear a skirt. He's just he's that's his brand, that's his persona. That does not make him less of a man. That man has a beautiful family, beautiful wife. He's more man than some of those other guys. The fact that he's wearing a skirt, he makes statements. That's a statement. But again, I use him as an example because I think that's what he brought as an example, just saying these guys are just this and that and everybody just so sensitive. I'm like, hey, agree to disagree, but I was hot. I was because again, you hear it so many times, and I'm just like saying, what did I say, man? I said something smart, which I shouldn't have said, but I just said, dude, you wear Vans. You don't even skateboard. Like, are you trying to be white? I said something like that. I'm sorry. I said something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
it's just, again, I'm like that. But what I just said was a stereotype, just because you wear Vans does not make you a
A
skateboarder. You
skateboarder.
happen
Yeah.
to just like the shoes.
Yeah.
So I just, I get on my rants, man. I apologize. This is your show.
No, 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 no. That's good. That's good, and that's what I love to hear because here's the thing. I feel like what I hear sometimes when I hear conversations like that is really, it's not a thing of they're taking our manhood, but it's. I feel like sometimes it's more of a thing of they're exposing my insecurity, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
that's
mm.
where I feel like sometimes we get into these things where it's like, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. What can all like my thing with it is what are number one, who are they? Right? Like I always ask that question. People are like, oh, they doing this, they like, okay, who is these people? Because you keep saying they is like a group of individuals somewhere that we're supposed to be able to identify. But whenever I ask who they is, we don't have a specific answer for who they are.
And
So I'm
honestly,
like,
they is the person inside of you. I mean,
for
seriously,
sure.
it's
That's
the
what I'm
person in your
saying.
mind. That's the
For sure.
days. That's the many days with no names, no zip codes,
No,
no
exactly.
addresses. You don't even know what they
Exactly.
look like, right? It's just what do they like to order from Starbucks? You don't know. You just don't know. There's
Exactly.
just a random person in their head. So
Exactly.
it really is. It's interesting, but you're absolutely right. Like I always wonder, like who is they? But for me, and I use the example of what I have a fear of public speaking. Um, I have a fear beforehand because I don't even know who's gonna be there. But in my
Mhm.
mind, I continue to tell myself, well, what if, and I make myself, I make myself anxious, I make myself nervous. So for them, their days is the person inside of them that continue to say it. And it could be their great uncle that they looked up to that probably said this, their mentor that probably said this is the what you need to be doing as a man. That's probably another person in their head that that's one of the days, right?
Mhm.
But it's it's
Mm.
it's it's ridiculous because we have got to continue to take that out of the picture because there's so many gifted kids, and the sad thing is there's a very high rate in suicides with youth. Not even
Mhm.
not even grown people. I mean, we're hearing about teenagers taking their lives because they're either getting bullied or they have their true passion, how the way they feel, how the way they want to be addressed, and they're being bullied from school, but they probably are also not respected from the household too, from their family or from their fathers. And it's hard. It's really sad because if we want to see this country continue to grow and continue to thrive with great creators, right? We have to continue to help motivate people. We have to continue to be cheerleaders of other people. We have to continue to brand build. We have to continue to just uplift. The uplifting is just so needed in our society. And I think if we continue to uplift each other and continue to uplift all different sides, we will have so much healing and
Mhm.
peace, and I mean, in unity. I mean, that's the key thing. And I'm not running for president, none. I know that sounds pretty
Yeah,
sharp, but I mean,
yeah.
now,
Not yet, at least.
and
Not yet.
I
Not yet.
approve
Not
this
yet.
message. No,
Not
I don't approve, but
yet.
it's just but seriously, man, it's just, I mean, the fact that we're having these kind of conversations is unheard of. I mean, some guys are probably looking at these men getting too sentimental. I ain't watching
Yeah,
this. I ain't watching
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean,
Well, what's
again,
all right? But here, and then here's my thing, dude, too, because I think that what you're saying. So here's kind of where I want to kind of circle back around. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was, with your generation, you're probably 13, 14, 15 years younger than I am, right? So we
mhm,
have this generation like a skip in generation.
mhm,
I personally believe that your generation, like the 20s, 30s, is really going to be key and responsible in changing a lot of this narrative. The reason I say that is because, number one, bro, technology, the way we're connecting, the way we're able to get a message out is completely different.
mm,
Number
mm.
two, you're willing to have this kind of conversation, right? That's what I'm saying. Okay, back in the day, maybe about 20 years ago, ain't no way two guys are gonna be like, hey, let's get on a podcast together and talk about feelings and what it means to be like a
Let's
man. Like,
open up a
no, bro.
bottle of wine. Let's
Yeah,
talk. No,
exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
joking.
it wouldn't happen, bro. It would not happen. And like a lot of people would be like, yo, what in the world? And to even go back to, like your friend that you had on the podcast, if honestly 20 years ago, if we would have probably been talking about this, the
Mhm,
label we would have gotten is, okay, those guys are like homosexual, something's wrong with them, yada yada, and this and this and that. And then it's like, okay, well, you could say that, but now what
mhm,
about like my son? Like, how do I now teach my son? I have a 6-year-old son now, right? And
mhm,
I
mhm.
notice that there's moments where he'll get upset about something. Do I tell him like, nah, stop, quiet that up, be a
Mhm,
man? Or do I take the time to say, hey, bro, it's okay for you to be upset. I'm gonna give you your time. I'm
mhm.
gonna let you process this because I have to teach you how to process it. Because if I don't
Absolutely.
teach you how to process your emotions now as a 6-year-old man, like boy, when you're 26 and you're ready to flip out on me because I didn't teach you or give you the space that you needed to like learn how to like handle life and understand what
Absolutely.
life is about, then
Absolutely.
I can't get mad when you flip out on me at 26 years old. Right? That's my thing. It's like, okay, we have like, even with the older generation, they might say, okay, well, these younger guys ain't listening, they ain't doing this, but you ain't never really gave younger guys the time to process their emotions and really figure out life. Everything was like, when something bad happened, shut it down, don't say nothing, keep it in.
And I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's you even you look at, like, crime going on, right? The crime
Mhm.
is involving, again, I go back to teens. They're getting younger and younger. Lives are being lost, or in the suspects are being younger and younger. The victims are being younger and younger. I always say, look, we have to look at the root, because those criminals are not always just pure T bad. They weren't born bad. There was a time where they were either never, what's the word I'm looking for? Didn't have the proper guidance, and that led them to a rough path. And so when you always just start off by saying this and that and that and this, and there are hard, criminals out there that just their evil is all around. So the evil is existence, but the fact of the matter is, you have to look at the root, and you have to realize, like, where was this kid hurting in order to think this is okay to do. Because
Mhm.
sometimes there's a lot of criminals that have great parents, and that's what
Mhm.
that mind's blowing people. Like, wait, you had some great parents, hard working, but where was the root? Was was the moment came when he was crying and his dad said, "You don't be a sissy, or don't, man up, man up." Was
Right.
that the peak for him? And then he said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna just flip out when I'm gonna become a head case in middle school, high school, and things like that." So you always have to, again, find the root and see exactly where this issue happened. Because I mean, again, where are these 15-year-olds getting this mindset from? 16-year-olds, they haven't been in the world that long. I
Long
mean,
enough. Yeah, exactly.
really,
Yeah.
from like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, they're still trying to figure out their ABCs and 1 2 3s. So
For
then
sure.
you take those 4 years out and then stretch it out until they get to like 15, 16. Where did all this stuff come from? So
Right.
again, you're speaking right on the head, Nick, as far
Yeah.
as letting your son when it comes to moments like that.
Yeah. And then too, I mean, at the same time, I gotta say this though, and this is
Hmm.
just my thinking. At the
Hmm.
same time, yes, we process emotions, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I'm gonna still teach you how to protect yourself. I'm gonna still
Absolutely.
teach you like things that I think are like, okay, this is what a man's supposed to do. Like I'm the head of my household. I'm supposed to
Hmm.
protect my family. I'm
Hmm.
supposed to be a covering. I'm supposed those are my roles, those are my responsibilities.
Hmm.
I'm gonna teach you how to do those things, but I may try and teach you how to do those things in a different way where you're allowed to be, because I think one of the damaging things when you look at like toxic masculinity is it
Hmm.
robs a lot of men of being who they were supposed to be, like who
Exactly.
God
Exactly.
created them to be, right? God
Absolutely.
created and this is my personal belief, every
Hmm.
single person that comes onto the face of this earth, God has created them for a specific purpose, right? And when you look at like this toxic masculinity, you can put, because I look back on my own life, right? But when
Hmm.
I was younger, I was real like creative. I was always like all over the place, like always moving. Like in class, I'd be like, "Yo, this is boring," because I would learn so fast and then move on to the next thing. But it was always like, okay, take all of that, and it's like, okay, well, nah, you need to be here at school. You need to be
Hmm.
doing this. You need to be doing this, and then it stifled a lot of that, and so you really rob a lot of men from probably becoming like who they were really meant to be, like, and what God designed them to be. Because you think, going back to David, my bad, before I cut you
You're,
off,
no, you're fine. You're
going
fine.
back to David, if you look at like David, the reason he became who he was because he was able to express the emotions of being a man. Like men came to him and was like, "Bro, this guy, he can still take your head off, but then we can duck off in the corner and have a conversation about how I can't figure out my marriage and how I
Hmm.
can't, like, what am I supposed to do?" And he's not gonna judge me. He's gonna put his arm around me and be like, "Bro, I'll cry with you. I'll do this with you, and we're gonna make it. But tomorrow when we got to get on the battlefield, we're gonna go to war."
That's
Right.
right.
So that's the balance that I think needs to kind of shift, man. So
Oh
didn't mean
man,
to cut you.
amen to that. And what you had said about still teaching your child how to protect himself. I mean, that goes on both sides. I mean, everybody teaches their boy and girl how to protect themselves. And just like you said, in different ways.
Hmm.
And it's extremely important. I don't think that technically means like, hey, you need to protect yourself as a woman, or you need to protect the man says you need to protect yourself as a man. They just say protect yourself.
Protect yourself. Yeah.
Proper guidance, being that provider really. And what I'm learning, men and women really are taught how to, hey, you need to help provide for family. There's uh daughters out there now being say, hey, you need to become, not be a provider, but yeah, we'll be a provider, and always still know how to work independently. And then you branch all that stuff together, and then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, we got this. We building up a team now. But you're absolutely right, you still have to build off that, guys. And it's funny, so when I was so until I was 7, my mother was a single parent. But I mean, my father was still in my life to this day. He just lived in a different state. But as far as in Virginia, my mother was a single parent. But I was
Mhm.
surrounded by my mom, my grandmother, and my 2 aunts. So I was surrounded by all females. So most again, go back to toxic masculinity. You're raised by all women. Guess what? You probably gonna be more like the women. And I wasn't, because my mom, my aunt, my grandmothers, my grandmother, and my aunts, they taught me really how to be the man. Once I was blessed with my bonus dad, who got me involved in athletics. But he topped it off. But I will say, my mom started off giving me that what's the word I'm looking for? She established that platform of, hey, just be, always defending yourself, being tough. It wasn't really about being a true man. She was just teaching me the way of life. And then
Life, yeah,
my
just life.
dad came and just added on some more greatness. So
Right,
it's just, and again, like I said, my father was in my life, and he was also providing that for me. Even though we were still in different states, I was very, very fortunate to again have a great support system. But if I think about it, and if I never would got into sports, I'll be the same old Arrington. I'll still cracking jokes. I'll still
you
uh
probably
you
wouldn't
know
be as big though. You'd probably be a little bit
no,
slimmer. So you
I
probably
don't know.
you
I
think
think
so?
I think I think I would be, well, because I was into wrestling before I even watched sports.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha,
I
gotcha.
was a
Yeah.
huge fan of wrestling,
All
so
right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
I
see that. Yeah.
got to look like The Rock, or I gotta look like
Yeah,
Triple H, I
I
gotta
got
look like
you.
these big guys. So I
Yeah.
was always into that, and appearance was everything and stuff. So I like to
Yeah.
swag out good, but it's just I was very blessed to have those conversations with my father. Never in that scenario where I thought like, oh man, if I don't do this, is he gonna look at me different? Is he gonna do this and do that? No, it was just
Right.
it was just simply just the way of life. And
Right.
I'm no parent, so I don't want to say most of y'all parents you do the same thing, because I don't have kids. But I do think that uh our generation now, the younger generation, like you said, more tech savvy, and just really trying to help change that narrative. We're in that era where the term YOLO, you only live once. We always go by that. Like, why don't you just do this? YOLO. We don't think on it. We just do it. And I think
Mhm.
that's what kind of makes at least the 20s and in that range kind of more inspiring. And on top of that too, it's important when it comes to, because you mentioned some key points, but I also want to throw in when it comes to voting, because that voting, it makes a huge difference when certain bills and laws are being passed. That's what
Yeah.
goes on in the young. They always say, young people, please vote, because it's you have some young people that don't worry about it. You have some people that are very much involved in it because they want to see the change. They want to see that narrative being changed. So
Right.
that's why you see a lot of young people marching 24/7, and going above and beyond, painting their whole body, or just doing everything they can to make that example. So, or to
Yeah.
get that message across.
For sure. And I think to add to that, when you talk about that, man, I know for me, like what you have gotten involved with as far as learning about that side as far as voting politics, because I'll be honest, I was like, I'm not gonna. The first time I voted was when Obama was going into office, right? Because I was like, yo, all right, let's
I
do it, you know
gotta
what I
vote
mean,
this
like
brother in. It's my
and that's it.
duty.
Right. And honestly, looking back on it, it was kind of ignorant. I'm not saying that I didn't want Obama to be in office, but I'm just saying, like, why did it take me so long to learn about what's happening and what's affecting me?
Is it okay
You
if
know
I
what I
can ask
mean?
what age you were when Obama first got in office?
Bro, when did he get in office?
Because
2012?
I was in seventh grade when he first won when he won that first election.
Which was 2008, right? 28? 2008? When did he come in office? Dang, we
2008,
got
yeah,
slacking,
2000.
bro.
I think
Dang. Then we're
I
gonna have to
think.
Google this one. This is sad.
Hey, it's all good. Hey,
we
hey,
go
it's been a long time. Oh, you
We're gonna
googling
have to
right now?
edit.
Okay,
We're gonna have to edit. We're gonna have to edit that one out.
we
We're
got
gonna
to
have to
fact
edit that
check
one
it.
out. We're gonna have to edit that one out because I don't want to give people the wrong. I want to say it was, it had to be 2008, 2009,
2000. Okay,
2009 or
you were close. You're close.
2017. Yeah. So yeah, the elections was in 2008, but he was in office 2009. So he got
Got you.
inaugurated 2009.
Got you.
So
Got you.
yeah,
Got you.
so 2008, bro. We're 2022, right? Yeah.
2022 right now. Almost finished with
Let's see.
2022.
So that was 14 years ago for me. So I was your age. I was
So
your age.
27. Wow,
So
wow, wow.
26,
Shame
27.
on you. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, 'cause I was late too. I was late too. I was probably at I want to say what election did I run? It was probably his second. Well, no, because his second. Yeah, his second term. Because seventh grade. Right at 18, 19. I think. I don't know if it was a second term or not, but I think I was between 18, 19, possibly 20 when I first when I first voted. Because again, and I've done local many times, but I just never really well, no, I take that back. I don't even know if I did local that much, but to say all that though, I learned my lesson and really focus on that, and just continue. Well, I think I cut you. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off because you were bringing that up with
No,
your
no, you
age. So
good.
Yeah,
No,
so
you're good. You're
yeah,
good.
no, I had it was just it's important to definitely understand politics, right? So I'm sharing with my friends, young and older than me, just simple conversations when it comes to local elections. I'm getting involved with I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends that work in local and state office, so I learn from them, um and not just as a business owner, why it's good to see what's going on in your community, but
In the
again,
community, yeah.
you if your whole, at least for my mission, is all about changing the narrative. I want to see change, I want to see equality, I want to see just positive changes happening. So I'm always gonna be at least having a seat, whether it's on the right or the left. I want to attend all the events and just get listen out, get the perspective, right?
Hmm.
And just help guide my help lead some of my younger friends and people that are rookies when it comes to understanding politics, because it is important. As much as people will say, hey, that whole phrase or term, your vote matters, doesn't really matter. It does. It really does. I understand that you're hurting the fact that you might have some promises that's never been met, and that's been kind of like the narrative in politics. That's why a lot of people kind of lean away from it. But in order to really see big changes in our society, I mean, it starts it starts with you, right? You can make so many changes by yourself. But it also does happen when it comes to the in politics. You got to vote, you got to cast your vote and vote for, if you have issue occurring, hey, vote, man, or either run. I mean, that's a lot of people I met, they say, well, I have an issue, I'm just gonna run. I'm not gonna
For
go that
sure.
far. I'm not gonna go that far, Nick.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not. I'll be behind the scenes, but I'm not gonna go that far. I
Right.
mean, my voice can say enough, because I can talk for hours and hours and hours, and I'm loud, so they can hear me from somewhere. But
But
yeah,
ready
man,
for it. Yeah, you ready for it. I hear you.
I'm not ready
What
for all that. I'm not ready for all
what
that.
I think that kind of it kind of brings a good segue, man, for us to kind of just land the plane a little bit. So I know you brought up some really good points as far as like voting, right? As far
Hmm.
as getting involved with voting, understanding the voting aspect of it, and kind of really just changing a lot of cultural things. But what else do you think, maybe not necessarily on more of a public level or more of like a group level, but what do you
Hmm.
think that we can do as men to kind of start changing some of that narrative around this issue of toxic masculinity, where it's like, you had some conversations with older folks, older guys, and you're like, how could what do you think that we could kind of start doing to change some of that narrative?
Well, for one, I mean, simple things is small groups, right? I remember when I was younger, and instead of like Bible study, you had youth groups. So you met up with young kids your age, going over scripture, but also having a lot of fun. So you can do the same thing now, doing some small groups. We live in a tech savvy world, so you're doing a perfect example right now, Nick, with your podcast, right? Your
Mhm.
podcast is listened and heard all over the world, in so many different podcast platforms. So when it comes to social media, we need to use our social media positively, because there's a lot of people that they get those toxic masculinity vibes through social media, because especially young kids are into their phones. I mean, I'm looking at young kids now, like, yo, you're 6 years old, how can you know how to control an iPhone 13 Pro Max more than me? Well,
For
what
sure.
I'm over here trying to figure out something, a little rugrat crap. I got you. Wait, hold on. You can talk. Like, it's just one of
For
those things.
sure.
Like, but we live in such a tech savvy world, and everything is a very judgmental world too. So when it comes to television, when it comes to again, podcasts, small groups, or just starting off with the one-on-ones, a simple thing, grabbing lunch with your friends, or playing sports, right, and having those conversations at the same time. Because
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, we're fellas, we just finished working out at the gym, lifting weights and doing all that stuff, going hard, but we're also having these conversations while we're doing it, right? So kind of
Mhm.
intertwining and incorporating the exact same things, going to your favorite sports bar and having those conversations, or just enjoying some just fellowshipping, right? So you want to continue to that's some of just the things I'm thinking in my head right now.
Mhm.
Social media, uh um uh, uh, small groups, group chats. Oh man, what else? um I don't know. I think that's all I could think of in my head, man. But that's how you have to start it off. I mean, just
Mm.
start with one person, and sometimes that one person can be like, "Hey, look, I have this guy that we had the same conversation. Okay, bring him on, and I can do the same thing, and you continue to build it up, build it up, build it up, and then you have a church size of dudes you're talking to that have the same thing, and if they continue to spread that message and refer to others, that's how you got to do it. That's really how you do
Right.
it, just by speaking, and just by speaking into existence, and by actions as well. So
For sure.
my
For sure.
example with with my friend who's openly gay, that I even posted that on my social media, knowing
Mhm.
everybody can see it. I'm like, hey, but it's positivity. We're helping bridge the gap, and we had a great time, and we're talking, all positive vibes. We're laughing. Hey, we're helping change that
I watched
narrative.
that episode too. He was firing off. He was funny, man. I like him. He's got his energy is hype, bro. It's a hundred,
Man,
a hundred and
man,
10%.
let me tell you
I
something.
like
When
it.
the episode when it goes out, man, the episode was so powerful. I honestly think it was probably my longest show excuse me, ever recorded. But it was so needed. Like, it was very inspiring. I was happy. Just the fact that I had to give myself a pat on the back, because I'm like, the guests, I usually hit up the guests, so I feel like we skipped me. But I had to,
Exactly.
I was proud, man. I was honored, and that same day of recording, I picked him up from his location, because his car was in the shop. So again, it was still a chain of narrative that I never, I was close to, man, that, hey,
Right.
so it was still, I felt just, I don't know, I just felt like, Lord, this was my A for the day, because
Yeah.
I just feel like I made this man's day, and I hope that this message was spread across, and I hope people can learn something from it. So I was really happy about that day.
Right, for sure, for sure. And I think you hit some really good points, man. And I think too, to add a little bit to add a little bit of seasoning on what you just said, I
Hmm.
think you made a good point about actions. It's really
Hmm.
about actions, our actions that we take. But then it's really about men being willing to have the courage to take that action, right? Because that's my thing.
Absolutely.
It's like, you were willing to say, I'm going to put myself out there, not because I'm concerned about what everybody else is saying, but because I'm concerned about this is another human being that has a whole story that people need to hear. And when people hear his story, they can say, okay, well, now I understand where you're at, or not even really why, but I just understand where you're at
Yep.
in life. You know what I mean? Because I hear your story. And so I think that's really key, man, is just really just having the courage to say, you know what? I'm gonna have these difficult conversations. That's why I don't mind having these conversations, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of these kind of conversations people don't want to have, because it exposes a lot of like my insecurity, it exposes a lot of your insecurity, it exposes a lot of who we are as men
Yep.
when we
It
start
brings up
having
that
these.
fear. It brings up
For
that fear.
sure,
Yep.
for sure. And we start talking and we're like, dang, I never really thought about how I was afraid of this or how I looked at this. But I think those conversations are really, really important, man. I think, man, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. Just having those conversations, bringing that positivity to social media, our interactions, how we're
Hmm.
dealing with people, how we're talking with people, man, I think can definitely change the narrative on that, man. I feel good, man. I feel like this was a really good convo. Anything else you could think
Man,
about, man,
man,
that you want to
I can
add?
man, I don't even, man, what it, I'm thinking so fast right now, because I'm like, right when we end this, it'll be like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna call you, be like, look, can you record my voice
Yeah,
saying this right now? You can?
yeah,
Okay, I try.
for sure.
But yeah, man, just I mean, you definitely, you nailed it, as far as having the courage, being more comfortable, being open, and not showing that fear. That's really,
Mhm.
I mean, when you said being more open and having that courage, that was like, man, I wish I would have said that. So you
Yeah,
you took my last point. You took my
there
last
we go.
point, because
That's how we
that's
change the
really it is.
narrative,
And
man.
yeah, man, it's simple. It's simple. So I truly, yeah, I hope they can get a lot from this conversation that we had, and hope to spread and have more conversations like that. And again,
There you
it's
go.
simple, guys. Hey, man up doesn't exist. Being the true meaning of being a man is just being yourself. There's no such true meaning as it. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Be the way that you want to be. Do not hold that in. Okay, please do not hold that in, because all you're doing is constantly, you know, building that lack of confidence in your true self. So please express your true self. Please, it doesn't make you lack of a man to talk sincere, to have those emotional conversations with your teammates, with your brothers, or just bros, man, it does not make you less of a man. And if it goes on in your household, please, let your father, let that masculine person in your family know that, so that maybe you can teach them and bring them more open, and then they, you're inspiring them to change their narrative. So that's my 2 cents, Nick. That's all I got.
Yeah,
That's all I
I
had
love
right
it.
there.
I love it. I love it, man. I appreciate it, man. Well, hey, look, this has been the Life Recreated Show, man. I enjoyed a wonderful, wonderful time with my brother Arrington here. And I'm going to make sure that I do a couple things. I'm going to link down in the description below where you can find Arrington. Actually, before we head out, man, where can people find you? Give them a shout out, man. Where can they find you on social media and everywhere?
Okay, so my IG is my name, Arrington Gavin. Very simple. Please also follow my business Rugged Evo. That's one of my business Rugged Evolution Beer Care, and as well as my podcast, Our Smooth Club Podcast, a show where everyday men discuss everyday topics. We're also on Instagram, our Facebook page, Our Smooth Club Podcast, our YouTube, Rugged Evo TV. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. And again, just I truly appreciate it, Nick. And thank you for having me. And
Yeah.
for those, just please continue to support my friend Nick. Continue to support this movement. His show is awesome. I'm jealous of his set, and he's the man. He's the man. But again, I truly thank you, brothers, for allowing me to have this conversation with you and for inviting me. I mean, hey, I hope to have some more invites to come. And
For
it was
sure.
it was awesome, man. It was awesome. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely, man. And I'm gonna make sure I'll link down everything in the description below, so you can find Arrington, find out everything he's doing. I'm gonna link some of the shows that he talked about, and just definitely look into what he's got going on. And for us, the reason that we're having this kind of conversation is because it's necessary for us as men to be able to change that narrative. On this channel, on this show, we're all about really just learning, healing, and growing all these different aspects of life. And so hit us up, man. Definitely check us out on YouTube. If you're checking us out on the podcast, definitely leave a comment down below, leave a review. Let me know how we're doing, what we can improve on, things that you might want to hear. Those things definitely help out. But until next time, I want you to keep learning, keep healing, and keep growing. Okay, we're done. I think I'm gonna end. If I stop now, I think it's gonna. Will it stop?